All right, so we're going to talk about lab tests, full stack 2. So you're going to get some starter code. You're going to have to build an application, a time application with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this is a task. So your initial starter code will look like this. It'll just be some text box label and buttons. And first stage is you'll have to apply the style sheet in the directory structure to your folder. You also have to, modify some elements and selectors to make them all work. So it's going to be first. I'm going to upload. I will upload Lab 7 test. You'll be able to find that starter code in there. After that, you will have the starter code will look like this. you will have, this is what it look like. You'll have index.html. As you can see, there some things are not linked up, so you'll have to link up to this style sheet right here. First off, you have to set the background image. As you can see, there is actually an image in there, and there are a bunch of styles in here that'll probably take effect once you link it properly. There's a bunch of other ones here that are not set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to set these up based on their selectors, right? You may need to modify the markup as well to get that to work. After that, that's stage 1. It should look like this. This is step 1. This is going to be static. It's not going to be workable. It has no interaction right now. This is kind of like where we learned from full stack 1, just HTML and CSS static page. If you can get that done, then you are, you should be at, I believe that, 20% to kind of set all of this up, at least get this far. So part 2 or stage 2 would be to add some JavaScript handlers. So you're going to modify your code. So in that structure, there's already an empty test.js file for you. Your code will go here. So you need to externally figure out a way to link it from this page. Now, if you do it inline, that's fine. Just know that eventually there'll obviously be a deduction. Obviously, the expectation is you can link it externally using a relative path. But as you're working, you'll figure out what's best for you. Maybe working inline in the file, and then you move it to that test.js file. That's the best practice and preferred approach. So you're going to add a handler to the window load event, output it to the console. You're going to add a bunch of event handlers to the buttons themselves, start and stop, and the reset. When you click start and stop respectively, there should be like a current time. So you'll have to figure out how to get that time formatted in that way. And of course, when you click the reset button, it'll output to the console. So if we look at this step 2, so if we clear this out here, it doesn't matter so much. I don't care if as you're looking at your console window, if this image breaks in that way. That's okay. It's just repeating. If you figured it out, that's great, but no big deal. So this point here is we should have event handlers. If I refresh this here, you'll see in the console window is loaded. So at least I've triggered a handler in that event. When I click start, it'll start timer with the current time. When I click stop, same deal. It'll actually give the current time. When I reset, it just triggers that set. Nothing more than that. The tricky part is obviously around setting the handlers up and then getting the date to correctly format properly. So if you can get there, that was another 20%. So 20 and 20, you're at 40%. So you have a good chance of passing it at this point if you can get these 2 stages with some clean code. It gets trickier as we go down. So step 3 is doing some date calculations. So you'll have to do some date calculations here. So update the JavaScript handlers for start and stop buttons. You need to track somehow the start and end time. So somehow, whether it be a local variable or global variable, you need to grab onto it sometime because you're going to do calculations based on that. And then using those values, you're going to calculate the difference in those 2 times from when the timer starts to the timer stops. When you click stop, then you're going to output to the console the duration of that timer. So if you can see there, you can see some different types of times, start times, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 15 seconds, right? It gets a bit tricky. I'm not gonna lie. Like the handling those date differences and calculating the different milliseconds, seconds, and minutes. That's the tricky part. So if we stop, this is the working version for step 3. If I start it, records at this amount of time, 4:37:32. I'm just stalling here. So when I click stop, you'll see that it actually has some kind of duration there. So, and again, it's, if you notice, you'll figure out in it, like you can see it says 8 seconds. So like, I'm not too concerned about that because you can do like a flooring or a ceiling. It's if you're a second off or millisecond off, it's no big deal. Because we're not counting the milliseconds, you're either going to round up or down. As long as it is within reason, it's not truly off. It's by like, 10 seconds or whatever. Like if it's off by a second, that's okay, because I know what you're doing. You're flooring up or down using math functions, right? So if I started, as well with the minutes too, you'll find if you delay long enough, you're gonna get some weird cases where you have to try to figure out how to offset things. So that's basically what it's gonna do. Yeah, so that's gonna be the third step. Very tricky, dealing with these times and trying the duration. I obviously reset. I took the console log off, but you can leave it on. We have plans for this. So this is step 3, which will get you 25%. Remember, when you start testing this, you'll see when you go over like a minute or two, it gets strange, and you need to account for the seconds not being, greater than 60 and things like that. So it's honestly, you'll probably spend most of your time here. So step 4 is obviously, creating a more interactive. We have an interactive interface, but adding some visual elements to it using the DOM traversal manipulation we've learned. So update those handlers. So now we want to update it to update our interface. So when you click the start, it'll populate the start text with that timestamp. When you click stop, it'll also populate that to the user with the timestamp, not to console, because obviously the user is not always going to be looking at the console. But the other thing is you're going to be adding a timer log event. So every time that the duration was actually console logged out, we're actually adding a list to the log. When we click reset, it resets everything. So it resets the start time, the end time, and all of the timer logs. So it looks like this. So it's more of a, as you can see, when I click reset, it'll reset everything. It doesn't reset my console logs, but the console log will be working as I'm going. So when I click start, you can see the text box as well as the console still going. When I click stop, it added my duration here. Same thing. It clears it out when I click stop, because I'm creating it clears out the end time, because now I have a new start time. When I click stop, it finishes and I have another duration here. I can reset all. In fact, we know that this console log is running. We can close this completely, so we have our interface looking like this. And as we are going through and we are adding different durations in time, whether or not we're stalling or not, this list can grow quite long. I'm just stalling so I can show different seconds here, right? And then the longer you wait, obviously, if you wait for 5 minutes, you should have 5 minutes showing. And then, of course, resets everything, right? It resets all values and start from scratch. So this right here would be a working version. And if you got that far, if I look at from coming from this place here, and we got to the end piece, then that's another 25%. So the submission will be on Blackboard. So you're going to zip this up and you're going to submit it within the time frame. And again, just going over marks. So stage 1 CSS will be 20%. Stage 2 event handlers 20%. Date calculations will be 25. Sorry, I said 20, 20, 25%, and 25%. So that equals 90. And then you have clean code and clarity, how you went about things, how you you named your functions correctly, you organized everything in a nice way, and all those things we learned from our project, and that's 10% with a total of 100%. So I'm going to post this video again. There's going to be starter code for you, and you'll probably have, again, we'll talk about the time period, but I'll post this up so you can refer to this as you're building it, and you can see a working version. All right, so I'll stop sharing here and I'll stop recording, and I'll wish you good luck. All right, see ya.